All right, so we're going to get started in a few moments. All right, so hey everyone, my name is Dr. TK, and I want to officially welcome you to the Thriving in Distant and Online Learning hosted by my church, Heavenly Vision, and me being the facilitator. So what I would encourage you to do, just some housekeeping before the actual workshop starts, is make sure that you have pen and paper ready. If you are watching this with your child, whether they be a small child, adolescent, or of course, a college kid, but adult, make sure that you both have something to write with, because I would prefer for the older kids to be able to do their own assessment when we talk about learning styles. And we'll go ahead and move forward. But I'm also going to have you participate in the chat box or whatever platform you're watching this workshop on, live or recorded. I want you to participate because we're going to talk about the difference between active and passive learning. Okay, so just to give you an introduction about myself, my name is Dr. Takesha Jackson Rudd, also known as Dr. TK. I am a licensed clinical psychologist in the state of California. I provide therapeutic services online right now, and I'm also a college professor. I've been teaching in undergraduate, master's, and doctoral level programs for a little bit over 16 years. And as far as the communities that I've served, is that I've served as young as K through 12, academic institutions, correctional facilities for kids, reentry populations, which means that people are coming from being incarcerated to coming back to the community. And then, of course, like community clinics. So I work with people out in the community. If you want to stay connected with me, you definitely want to check me out on Instagram at Dr. TK Psych. But not about me, it's about you today. So let's go ahead and get started. So I like participation. And so if you have the ability to do so, head over to the chat box and put, if you're watching this live, what city and state you're located in. I know that this workshop is being broadcasted on multiple platforms. Different people were invited from different avenues. So I do like to see who I'm talking to, but let me know the city and state that you're in. I am in right now San Bernardino County, California, but I'm from Los Angeles County, Compton, California. And then also, if you want to participate live, then I would like to know what school you go to. Like, so if you go to K through 12, then what school are you attending? If you're in college, because I know at our church, we have some youth that actually went to school out of town, out of state. And so where are you located as you're watching this training? Some people chose to come back home as well. Another thing that I like to look at, and the reason I'm going through this, let me just give a disclaimer. The reason I'm going through these questions is that anytime I meet a new group of students, especially in the classroom setting, even if we're online, I find it vitally important to socialize, because that's one of the things we're going to talk about today, which was kind of removed once this distant online learning or online classroom was implemented back in March. And so what I ask my students to do, because I'm a psychology professor, is to always rate your mood, especially before you start learning or you're sitting in a lecture. And so what you want to do is look at your mood on a scale of 1 to 10. So 1 would be right now, you cool, calm, and collective, and 10 is you're on edge, about to blow. Okay. And the goal would be that you don't stay, if you're at a high number, like above a 7, that you bring your number down by some techniques that I'll share with you in this workshop today. But you always want to get an idea of what your mood is so that you can know what move you should make in terms of who you should talk to. What do you need to do? Do you need to sit still and be mindful for a second to then calm down, maybe do some deep breaths? So we're going to talk about that toward the end after I share some neat tools so that you can be more engaged in the online learning experience. Another thing that I want you to think about before we jump into the strategies today is, do you know your learning style? So if you've never heard of those two phrases together, then the answer would be no, but that's okay, because by the end of today, you will know your learning style and you will know what to do with your learning style in terms of how do you learn better in the classroom, online, and or eventually when we go back to a campus. And then also, does it make you anxious that you are lacking socialization? These are one of the pieces that I've had to talk to parents since March about. I'm gonna say especially with little kids, because sometimes we negate to have, or I'm gonna say we neglect to have those conversations with little kids and teenagers, and heck, even ourselves or our counterparts, people our age. And socialization for children is what they have to continue to motivate them to go. It's not just family relationships. And so if you are a parent, or I'm going to say a caregiver, meaning you are helping out kids in your house, or you've taken on the role maybe as a parent type role, that can be an uncle or aunt, grandparent, family member, non-blood relative, then you want to constantly, maybe once a week or so, just check in and ask the child, like, how was their week? Who have they spoke to? Did they meet anybody new in their classroom? How do they like their teacher? So you do not want to neglect the socialization, because socialization, I believe, is what makes all of us evolve over time, is our relationships with other people. So the agenda today is I'm going to talk about what thriving means in the educational system. And we're also going to talk about what active and passive learning means. And you'll be able to look at, are you an active learner or a passive learner? Because that might have dictated maybe the grades you used to get like last semester, or maybe pre the era or season that we're in right now. We're also going to do a learning styles quiz. So I'm going to walk you step by step where you're literally going to score yourself. Okay. And then we're going to talk about how to deal with stress, especially right now, because a lot of things, even with the schools being open, like online, there still are a lot of unknowns, not just for the parents or the caregivers, but specifically for the actual student, whether you are a child minor student or a college or graduate student. Okay. And then of course, I'll open it up for Q&A if you have questions. So let's talk about Thrive. So I like making acronyms. And so my acronym for Thrive is as follows. And you can snapshot a picture of this screen if you would like to, keep it for yourself. And so T stands for tackle your learning goal. So you should have a goal always starting a school semester. I remember when I was like, even up to grad school, but like specifically K through 12, no matter what happened the previous semester or the previous year, I would always say, okay, this is a fresh start. I'm going to have a great year this year. And it's all about positive vibes, positive energy. And you have to be able to speak what you want your result to be in order to move toward that outcome. If you start off, tackling a negative learning goal, like, oh, here go math again, what I'm saying? I can't learn online. I'm going to flunk out of math, then what do you think is going to happen with your behavior that follows those thoughts when it comes down to doing math? So be very mindful of your thought process when it comes down to tackling a learning goal. The H is for help. Now, I am going to give you more tips later, but help is very, very important. You have to ask for help. So prime example, I actually meet with college students in my therapy practice. And one of the things that I've told them during this online season is that I teach at a community college. So community colleges, and I believe the universities, all have resources. It's just more about you figuring out what department offers the resource, like tutoring. What does the tutoring look like? And then how can you contact that department? The same thing if you're a parent or caregiver for a child or a minor, is looking in your community to see who offers free, low cost, or if you can afford regular costs, online one-on-one tutoring, because that may be what your child needs, specifically catering to their learning style. The R is for reach. So I encourage all students, no matter how old they are, reach out to other kids. Like my son, he's 9 years old, but he has a best friend from like his previous school. So from time to time, he says, can I call so-and-so? And then we get his number, and then they FaceTime one another and they stay connected. When he started school this year, he was happy to see that about 99.9% of the kids were in his classroom from last year, but he stayed connected with those kids, making sure that he talks to them while in the classroom, of course, when that time is presented by the teacher, because you don't want to talk out of turn, right? But for high school kids, I mean, you got cell phones. For adults, we have phones, we have online, so stay connected with other students. Also, the I is for ignore negative thoughts and energy. So I alluded to that in the first tackling your learning, in that if you have negative thoughts that are coming up about this situation we're in and life will never be over. Some people have said it feels like the end of days. I'm not going to be able to ever go back to school. You don't know that. And so what I would rather you focus on is what you actually have control over, which is your academic performance, okay? V is for visualize. So I want you to start visualizing yourself at the end of the semester. So if you are on a quarter system, semester system, then I want you to look at, what do I want my grade to be on that report card? What do I want my grade to be if you're in high school on that semester report card? Especially if you're a senior, you definitely got to be on your P's and Q's, because technically whatever you did in 9th through 11th grade is going to the colleges. And then the 12th grade solidifies your acceptance, because everybody is accepted contingent upon you do well in your 12th grade year. So don't not do well, okay? And then E is, I am a whole life type therapist. So I really focus on health of the mind and health on the body. And so make sure that you're feeding your body the right things. I'm talking about food, water, nutrients, vitamins. Vitamin D specifically is very important right now. We're inside most of the day, unless you can go outside to the backyard or hang out in your neighborhood and it's not crowded or something, depending on where you stay. But you want to make sure that you're feeding your body, because that will impact your academic performance as well. Okay. So now let's talk about active and passive learning. So some people may have heard of these terms before, but I want you, or if you're a parent or a caregiver, I want you to be very clear on what type of learner you are, or if you're observing someone else for the sake of this workshop, what type of learner are they? Because I know I have some parents on here that also have children. So you're kind of listening to this on both sides. Okay. So first, let's talk about what an active learner is. So an active learner, if I were to visualize a student in my classroom, they are the student that will ask questions, whether it's in front of the whole class, or maybe they'll email me one-on-one because maybe they're not that sociable, which is okay. But if they get stuck, they don't mind asking questions, okay? An active learner is also someone who attends office hours specifically to ask questions and or if they're stuck. So could you believe that in 6.5 years of teaching at a community college, I've literally had less than a handful, less than 5 college students come to my office when they're stuck, when they're struggling, after multiple attempts and invitations. Even I've offered, let's talk on the phone, let's text, let's get on Zoom before this era happened, and less than 5 students would come. But then guess what happens right when finals are about to happen? All of a sudden, everybody wants to meet with me, but unfortunately, your time has expired. Whatever grade you have now, the final isn't going to fix it per se. You're not going to jump from an F to an A, you know? So I'm also telling you, don't wait too late, okay? Also, an active learner guesses the answer, even if it may be wrong. So what this looks like is, in my psychology course, I like to have fun when I teach, even if it's online. So I like to play Jeopardy. And every time we're getting prepared for a quiz or like a midterm or a final, I like to make it fun, because that is part of active learning, because it's going to stick more. So I would have 2 kids come up, or 2 adults come up to the front of the classroom. We would divide the classroom up into like different groups. They would have to put their hand behind their back, and they would have to, like, slam their hand on the desk or whatever, or raise something up. And I would this is very important, I would tell the people in the crowd, because they can't yell out the answer clearly, because that's cheating, is I would tell them, get out a sheet of paper, and every question that I ask the people that are standing up front, I want you to write down your answer, even if you think you don't even know the answer. Guess the answer, because what happens is through active learning, and for parents, if your child is studying for like a spelling test or something like that, this is something that you can try as well. Try to have them just guess the answer first before giving them the real answer, because once they're corrected, it'll actually stick longer. That's just what research shows with how our memory works, how our brain functions. Okay. So it's always great to be actively learning that way. And then lastly, but there are plenty more, but I just grabbed a few. An active learner also participates in activities. So whether that be group activities so that the teacher doesn't have to call on your name or the professor, and or maybe nowadays, like on Zoom, starting back in March when we transitioned initially, I broke out my students into Zoom group rooms. Not all professors or teachers are going to do that. However, I believe that it's a very cool thing to have because it allows students who may not want to talk in a large group of people. It allows them space to be able to talk in a smaller group. So I noticed that a lot of students who weren't talking with like 40 something students in my classroom, they would talk when I would break them up into groups of like 2 to 3 to 4 students at a time. Okay. So that's active learning. Now, passive learning. A passive learner is a person who is just the opposite. They don't ask questions. You're stuck, you stay there. This is also a person who tries to figure it out all alone. They don't ever contact the professor or teacher to say, hey, I'm stuck, I have a problem. And I always say, go to your teacher and your professor first, because they're giving you the instruction of how they want you to do the work. Then if you're still stuck, take that information and then take it to a tutor or even to your parent. Because I've known we've helped our eldest son with something in math because of the way that I learned math, and it's totally different, like 5 decades later, you know what I'm saying? And like, not that much, but like, 2 to 3 decades later. And he ended up getting the answer wrong. And I've talked to friends where if you're a parent, don't be so narrow-minded to believe that your instruction of how you are telling the child or minor or young adult how to do their work is the right way, because that kid actually has to answer, or that student has to answer to their teacher themselves. Okay. So also, this particular student will sit in the classroom or in the online environment, watch the process. So for example, they'll watch the professor lecture like I'm hosting this workshop, and they won't ever say anything. They don't take any notes. If they were in the classroom, they will literally be staring around, probably texting on their phone and not paying attention. That's a problem because they're not actively taking in any information. And then also, they do not participate in activities. So this is a student who may get the best slacker in the group, meaning they're in a group project and they don't do their part. You ask everybody to email you their portion of the PowerPoint and they don't choose to do it. So also be very mindful if you are going into an online environment and some of the students that are in your classroom, don't pick people just because you like them, but they have poor work ethic. That's a serious one, because their poor work ethic will mess around and get you an F in class. Okay. So you may want to identify, based off of what I just mentioned, you want to know which one you are and be honest with yourself. If you know that you're more of a passive learner, then what is one thing that you can do differently to become more active? And I said one because it's one step at a time. I'm not expecting you, no one is expecting you to become an active learner like overnight, especially if you're 18, 19 years old. You probably been doing this since, elementary school. And unfortunately, it might have been reinforced because nobody called you out on it. So now you have to change a recurring habits. Also, how will it help your learning? So how will becoming an active learner help you learn more? If you say, I don't have any friends, I don't talk to anybody, but yet when you go to class, you don't communicate to people in your group, you just sit there, then how do you expect to grow relationships? Okay. So now let's shift. We're going to move into the learning styles quiz. This is a time where you definitely want to have your pen and paper ready. Okay. And first I want to go over the benefits of why you should understand the learning styles. Now, if you're an adult or a adolescent that's old enough to do this quiz on your own, then I want you just to consume the information and ask yourself, okay, how can I implement this information into my learning? If you are also, or you are just a parent on here learning for the instructional aid of your child, you want to pay very close attention to these questions and try to break them down looking at the age of your child. And when I go through them, if something looks like it's more of an adult type of learning style, then I'll break it down into child language, meaning you can think about your kid and say, oh yeah, that's him or her, because you want to score it for your child, because this will tell you how your child learns information. And before we wrap up, I'll actually share how we had to implement this in our home with our eldest son. So some benefits of knowing your learning style is you want to be able to understand how you learn, and then of course how your children learn. It does make your homework easier to do because now you know certain techniques based off your learning style. And all this will make sense once you take the quiz. Okay. It can also help you study better. It can assist you with how do you ask for help and what to ask for help for or with. And then of course, I'm always looking forward. It can help you in the job setting as well, because the learning style is nothing different. Even with running a business for myself, I have to create information or content, online courses for people in my business to cater to all of the learning styles that I'll share with you today. So these are the 3 learning styles that we'll focus on. And then we're going to share like, what do you do after you know your learning style? So the first learning style is visual. Another one is auditory, meaning you have to hear information to consume it and retain it or keep it. Visual is, of course, you have to see it. I clearly am a visual learner, mixed with a kinesthetic learner, meaning hands-on, because I need a PowerPoint to stay on track when I'm teaching. But then I also, clearly it's auditory because I'm talking, but then kinesthetic, hands-on, I like for my students to learn when they're doing something. I think that they catch on quicker, and I do as well. So we're going to talk about what do you do in the classroom once you learn your learning style. So what you want to do is grab your pen, pencil, crayon, marker, paper, and I want you to number your paper from 1 to 14. And if you don't want to number it, you could just go in the order that we're going to go and number it as we go. Okay. So at the end, what I'm going to have you do is tally up how many of each do you have, like the visual, auditory, and kinesthetic. And then we're going to talk about what do you do with that information, because that best describes your learning style in this season of your life. And I say that wholeheartedly because in this season, you may be visual, but then maybe as you get older, you'll develop a love for auditory, which means you don't need a physical book. You can actually listen to auditory books and be just fine because you've developed a different type of learning style over time as you matured. So let's jump into it. Number 1, if I have to learn how to do something, I learn best when and what you're going to do is put V next to your number 1, you're going to put V, A, or K. That's your answer code. So you put which one applies. You don't have to write down the whole sentence, just put V, A, or K. So if I have to learn how to do something, I learn best when I V, watch someone show me how, A, hear someone tell me how, or K, try to do it myself. Again, if you're a parent, does the child have to watch you do something for them to learn how to do it? Do they have to hear you tell them and they're good, they do it right away? Most kids don't. Or does a kid like, I'll try it myself, kind of thing. Number 2, when I read, that's spaced out. When I read, I often find that I visualize what I'm reading, that's the V, read out loud or hear the words inside my head, that's A, or I fidget and try to feel the content I know I can understand what I just read, right? So that's the K. So you either got a V, a, or a K. You either visualize it, you may have to read it out loud so that you can consume it, or you may have to move around. All right. Number 3, when asked to give directions, I see the actual places in my mind as I say them or prefer to draw them. So that's visual. When asked to give directions, you may have to visualize it. You got to see it in your head first. A is having no difficulty in giving them verbally. Somebody asks you how to get to a place and you can just verbally tell them without a doubt. You don't have to look at a Google map. You can just tell them. Okay. The K, have to point or move my body as I give them. So what this would look like, and I've done it before, is, all right, when you're going down Rosecrans, then you got to make a left, right? You even may close your eyes, but you literally move your body and your hands as though you're driving in the car. Okay. So your kids may do the same thing. If you ask them, okay, give me the directions of how your teacher told you how to do this. Oh, well, she told me how to. That's they're pointing it out, but they also may be visualizing it as well. Okay. So you just got to pay closer attention. Number 4, if I am unsure how to do something, if you're unsure of how to do something, I, V, write it in order to determine if it looks right. So if you're unsure of how to do something like a math question or a paper, you may list out something and look at it and say, okay, that's right. Like ingredients to cook, because this is not just about school, it's about learning styles in other parts of your life as well. Okay. So if you're learning how to cook something and you couldn't remember the ingredients, you may have to list it out. The A is spell it out in order to determine if it sounds right. And then K is write it in order to determine if it feels right. So you physically have to do the act of writing it out. Okay. Number 5, when I write, I, the, am concerned with neat and well spaced my letters and words appear. So when you write, you're focused on just how neat the paper looks. That's all you focused on. Okay. A is often say the letters and words to myself. So when you're writing, you're probably like, and then she went to the store. You're talking to yourself. That's auditory. And then K is maybe you get the pen or pencil or crayon and you push hard on your part of your writing utensil because you need to feel the flow of the words. Like, I really feel this right now, right? And that may elicit some type of emotion. That's K, kinesthetic. Number 6, if I had to remember a list of items, I would remember it best if you wrote them down. So you remember something like going to the store if you physically wrote something down and or wrote it in your phone. And A, said them over and over to myself. K, you moved around and used your fingers to name each item. Like, I know I needed some bread. I know I needed some milk. Like, that's kinesthetic, like you got to move around. Okay. Number 7, I prefer teachers or professors who, and for parents, just think about, if you haven't asked your kid, you may want to ask them, what would be your ideal world? Like, describe your ideal teacher. You can ask a kid that, like, what will make your teacher cool? And see what they say, and then look at this answer. So B is, these individuals, they prefer teachers or professors who use a board or overhead projector while they lecture. Another way on online learning would be, they like teachers who have PowerPoints, who do some type of visual aid so that they can follow along.
Hello, family. Hello. I think we may be having a little bit of technical difficulty. And so we'll go ahead and wait for Dr. TK to hop back in. But this is definitely a powerful conversation. There she is. Okay. I'm glad we're back on board. But yeah, the learning styles, that really helped me personally. So I love this portion of it. Super good. Okay. And we're back in the hands of Dr. TK.
What number did you guys leave off on? What number did you guys hear?
7.
So you heard this one? The V?
Yes.
Okay. And I'm actually glad that I got kicked out, because this is part of the lesson that I want to talk about with online learning, because this will happen. So let me actually just pause right now and talk about what just happened. Zoom just kicked me out. It's not my internet. Zoom just kicked me out. So one of the tips that I'm gonna go ahead and just insert right now for those of you who are watching live or recorded is, right now we're in an era where everybody is streaming at the same time. And I've noticed that anytime that I host a workshop between the hours of 7 and 9, and especially for like 3 to 5, the streaming is very slow. So if you are doing a Zoom stream with your teacher or professor, or you're on YouTube, or some type of online streaming service, please note that now that everybody is going back to school, all levels, K through 12, college students, graduate students, people who go to work online, at home all day with like 2 to 3 computers, there will be times where there will be glitches. You will be kicked out of Zoom, like you didn't ask to be, and you just got to hop back in there and maybe shoot your teacher a message if you can't get back in. But the reason I wanted to pause here was because I've given my students, like, I have a designated text number that I use for my office that my students can text me, just because they're young and they probably will prefer to text me than call me, because if I say call, they will never call. But I would urge you that as soon as you get your syllabus, or for parents, as I know that they have apps now, but as soon as you get that teacher's information, please write the information offline. Like, don't just say, oh, I have the syllabus in my Google Drive, I have the syllabus in my email, because literally 2 months ago, I was working with a client and they told me in their area, Spectrum Cable had an outage, not Zoom, the whole cable internet company had an outage. So it's very possible. And you want to know that, especially for those of you who are also streaming in a household where multiple people are streaming at one time. So just keep that in mind. So yeah, it sucked that I got kicked out, but at the same time, it just gave me information to give you as a bonus tip. You want to be in contact with your teacher at all times and check your emails, because Zoom had an international outage on Monday. So nobody did anything. Okay. So V, I prefer teachers who you need a visual aid. A, you need teachers who talk with a lot of expression. And K, you prefer teachers who have hands-on activities. So that would be like group assignments, those Zoom group out rooms, and things like that. Okay. So you want to know what type of teacher you prefer, even though you may not get them, but I mean, at least you know who you want, Number 8, when trying to concentrate, I have a difficult time when there is a lot of clutter or movement in the room. That's V. You should not be in a room where it is cluttered and a lot of noise, because you're not going to focus on your homework or classwork. A is there is a lot of noise in the room, so too much stimuli is coming in. A lot of students, even myself, would say, as I was growing up, I have to listen to music to study. First of all, that's a narrative that you've told yourself, because that's not true. Okay. It's more of like, as a therapist, I would ask you, well, what happens when you don't have noise to detach you from what's happening in your environment? What are you thinking about? You know what I'm saying? So just something to think about, a little psychological tool right there. K is I have to sit still for a length of time. So maybe your physical body, it says when trying to concentrate, I have a difficult time when you have to sit still for a length of time. So I'm not sure how long the classes are. I know that the college classes that I teach are about an hour and 35 minutes each. I typically give my students a break, not a stand-up break, but kind of like all right, open for Q&A. I mean, that's their time to go to the bathroom, get some water. If they're watching me on their phone, walk around with your phone. No one says that you have to sit in a freaking corner. Just be respectful of other people in your classroom with turning your camera off and muting yourself, because we, the professor or teacher, can see and hear everything, even when you think we can't. Please. Okay. Yeah, so let's see, where's the Q&A? Oh, where are the questions? Go ahead. I'm going to the chat box. Oh, can you have 2 answers to 1 question? Oh, so yeah, go ahead. If you have more than 1 letter, go ahead and write that down, because at the end, we're still going to tally it. So yeah, you can be a V and an A. That's fine. Okay. But if you have a more dominant one, I would say go with the dominant one. Number 9, when solving a problem, IV, write or draw diagrams to see it. So maybe if you're in math, you got to doodle something. A is you got to talk yourself through it. Like if you're doing division as a kid, like, 40 divided by 9, you got to talk it out. And then K is you use your entire body or objects to help you think. So literally you may have to move, may have to move your arms in order maybe to get your mental stuff going to remember something. Number 10, when given written instructions, and this will be honestly primarily online right now for parents and students. When given written instructions on how to build something, I read them silently, like you read the instructions silently, and try to visualize how the parts will fit together. This to me can be translated into the classroom. A teacher has sent you instructions on on what paper to write or what to research in your book if you're a high school or college student, and then what paper to write after. Maybe this visual person will have to visualize, all right, I know I'm gonna write 5 paragraphs. I know my intro is gonna look like this. My middle paragraphs, they might be about this. You're literally visualizing it in your head. Now you still may be talking it out loud, but there's no visual. Okay, that's the difference mainly between the B and the A. Is the auditory, you're just talking. You ain't picturing nothing. Okay. The K is you try to put the parts together first and then you read it later. So maybe you write down your outline, and maybe it's out of order, but you don't care. You just got to write it down to get the thoughts out of your head. Okay. So look at your child as well. Does your child have to visualize the paragraph? Like they may say like, mom or dad or caregiver, give me the sheet of paper. Let me number it like 1 through 5. Okay, I know I got to have 5 paragraphs. Or auditory may be, they may tell you like what has to happen. Okay. Number 11, to keep occupied while waiting for my impatient people. To keep occupied while waiting, I look around, stare, or read. You look around, stare, or you got to be fixated on something visual. Okay. A is while occupied, you talk or listen to other people. This can be very dangerous in the online setting because if you have a teacher that lectures, like what I'm doing right now is not me, like I'm hosting a workshop right now, webinar style, but in a classroom, I can see my students can see me. I'm not about to talk no hour and a half. I'm gonna talk for 15 minutes, Q&A, talk for 10 more minutes, Q&A, breakout room, let's go, you know? And so some people, in order to stay occupied, this can be dangerous in the online setting, because if you're not actively learning, you'll start texting on your phone. You'll start taking phone calls, YouTubing and doing other stuff. So be careful, talking to people in your house, and then, you missed the part of the lecture. One thing that a lot of students don't know, so I'm gonna go ahead and share it because me and the creative team director actually just talked about it before this workshop started, is that as a professor and as a teacher, because they're minors, but due to the rules in schools with privacy, we can't record a Zoom call. That's why some teachers upload their stuff to YouTube for you to watch it later, because we actually can't record it. So what does this mean in terms of if you get preoccupied and you start talking to other people in your house and then you miss a critical point for your assignment? Oh, now you really got to ask for help because you missed it. And some teachers will not repeat themselves. Okay. And they don't have to. So K is walk around. To stay occupied, this person may have to walk around, manipulate things with their hands, like maybe a stress ball or something. And they may have to like just feel. Okay. So they may even shake their foot when they sit down because maybe you tired of sitting in one space. Almost done. Number 12, if I had to verbally describe something to another person, I would be brief, because I do not like to talk at length. Like you don't like to talk for a long time, so you just get straight to the point. A is go into great detail because you like to talk. Please own who you are. And then K, and you need to know this about your child as well. K is you do gestures and move around while talking. So when you're verbally describing something to someone else, you do a lot of this. Okay, it ain't got to be all that extra, but you move. All right. Now this one is a little different. If someone were describing verbally something to another person, so if you observed a conversation like happening, you would try to visualize what he or she is saying. So you would like be listening, but trying to visualize pictures in your head about what they're talking about. If they're telling you a dramatic story, you're like, oh, I can see that happening. That's V. A is enjoy listening, but want to interrupt and talk yourself. That's an auditory person. Like you got to talk to be in the conversation, to consume something. And then K is, some of you probably are laughing right now because you're thinking about your kids. K is you become bored if his or her description gets too long in detail. So couples may have this problem. Like, why are you repeating yourself 5,000 times in 5 different ways? I heard you the first time. But this is another tip. Maybe your body language says that you didn't understand it because your body language looks like you're confused or you don't care. So if you look like you don't care, the person's feelings don't feel validated. And what will they do? They'll explain it another way until it look like you care. Okay. Hope that was a bonus tip for all my couples out there. All right. Last one on the learning styles quiz, number 14. When trying to recall names, and please be honest to who you are, I remember B, faces, but I forget names. Be honest. You meet people and you like, I remember your face, but I don't remember your name. A is you remember the name, but you forget the faces. And then K, the situation where I met the person rather than the person's name or face. So with this one, I know that this one, you can technically meet all three, but I would want you to think about which one dominates who you are. Do you usually remember faces more? Do you usually remember names more? Or do you usually remember, oh yeah, on 4th of July at so-and-so house, okay, I remember you, and then it comes back or something, right? So what I want you to do is I want you to add up the V, the A's, and the K's, and I want you to put a number next to it. So V is for visual, A is for auditory, K is for kinesthetic. Okay. So some of you may have a tie, or it's very close, like maybe a 9 versus 10 or something, or a 4 versus 5. But some of you may have a very dominant number. Now, I'm not here statistically to say you need this number to be dominant. It's just what's your highest number is your dominant learning style right now. Okay. So everybody should have that number now. So I'm now going to show you the results, but we'll figure out a way to get this link out so that you can just download this handout, because I don't want to spend time reading through every single line, but I'm just going to use some examples. Okay. And I'm going to make it very real and talk about my 9-year-old son. Okay. So the goal would be that now you implement your score into your learning style. So I believe my screen should still be shared, and you should see something on the screen that says learning style study strategies. Okay. So the goal here is that now that you know your learning style, the handout that we're going to make accessible to everyone who's watching it now or later, we'll just upload the link later, is they give you tips from this quiz. Because here's a quiz right here. I just like copy and pasted it into the PowerPoints. So you can take it again. You can do it multiple times with people in your home. But it gives you visual learning, like some strategies, auditory learning and some strategies, and then kinesthetic learning with some strategies. So let's just do visual for now, just because I think that a lot of teachers are using visual aids because we're in the online course setting. So the example I'll give you is of our eldest son, that's 9 years old. When he was 7, every year he has to study for like spelling tests, right? And this is when he was still physically going to school. So one day I saw that my husband was getting a little irritated because we were working on these words for a long period of time. And I was sitting on the couch and I recognized that he wasn't doing well when my husband would try to make him spell the words out loud. And I really want you to hear me, because parents, you have to pay attention to your child's learning style. Even if they didn't take this quiz, just simply observe how they're responding to teaching, especially from you right now, because heck, you're their part-time teacher. So after he kept getting the answers wrong, but when my husband would put the sheet in front of him, and let him write it, that's when we recognized that he would do a lot better. So I had recognized that like a while ago. So what I had said to him is I said, give him the little dry eraser board that's on the refrigerator that, you write like what you want from the grocery store or something like that. So I said, give him the dry eraser board. And when you tell him to spell the words, have him write it down. He didn't get not one word wrong. And my husband was like, what the heck? What the heck just happened? Were you playing me? Like he's talking to the son, like, were you playing? Like acting like you didn't know the words? And I said, no. And I told him to take a break, but I just talked to my husband. I said, I think that he may be a visual learner when it comes down to specifically reading and spelling and any type of written expression, because he may physically need to see himself writing it. And besides, this ain't no spelling bee. He actually will have to write the words on the sheet of paper. So why are we trying to force something that doesn't need to be done right now? I hope that really makes sense for you. So if you're a visual learner, these are some tips that I'm going to point out. Organize your work and living space to avoid distraction. So if you even have a classroom set up in your bedroom, in the kitchen somewhere for the kids in the corner, also make sure that as a parent or a caregiver, you don't overstimulate the kid. So a good example of this would be one of my college students, high school kids, she had said that she was having a hard time studying. And I said, okay, tell me what's around you. She said, oh, I got my books stacked up. And she got like 6 books, back then. And I'm like, why do you have all the books on the table? She said, well, I just pull one book out at a time when I have to do my homework. I said, but it sounds like you get overstimulated, because what happens is while she's doing English from her English book, she low-key looking at the math book like, oh, I'm dreading math. I don't want to do math. Because now she's overstimulated by something else in her environment, it's impacting her current homework assignment that she actually likes to do. I hope that really makes sense. So what I would suggest, it may not be an issue now because most of the books are online, but even then for adults, because we got a real bad habit of this, don't have too many browser pages open, please. I've shared the screen with multiple clients and they got like 30,000 browsers open. First of all, that slows down your stream, if you didn't know. And then two, it makes you want to be unfocused to go to another screen to say, oh, shoot, I forgot to check that email. And then you click on there, and then 10 minutes later, you forgot that you were supposed to be doing an assignment. So all this is about is avoiding distractions, be organized, stay neat. If you need to, get visual imagery to help you learn. Now, in terms of asking for help, one of the things that I implemented myself in college is that because I'm a visual learner, if a teacher is primarily lecturing with no visual aid and they're never going to have one, then I'll actually ask them or email them and say, hey, like, do you have a PowerPoint that supplements like what we did today? Or is this video somewhere uploaded to a portal like Beyond Our Classroom? And they may say yes or no. If they say no, you just got to get better at taking notes. But I want you, as your homework, to read through this sheet based off of your learning style, also if you're a parent, so that you can start implementing these tactics, okay? So we have a few minutes left. So I want to talk about decreasing stressors. So I'm going to give you just a quick mental health strategy that I teach all clients. It alludes to treating any negative emotion, whether it be anxiety, depression, just generally like mood irritability, negative vibes. Okay. So whenever you feel stress going on, the first thing I would like you to do is take 3 deep breaths. Okay. So that you can be mindful to your body. Now, as far as the steps goes, I should have numbered these, but the first step is when you feel stress coming on, or if you already know that you're in a stressful state, you should learn how to first recognize what triggered you. People don't want to slow down and do this part. So triggers have 2 parts. You want to look at the internal and external triggers. So let's just say you're that kid and you got all these homework assignments to do beyond the online classroom, and you're like, what the heck? I can't do all this right now, and it's due like in 2 days. Then what is the internal trigger? What are you telling yourself? What are the self-sabotaging statements that you're saying to yourself to make you more anxious? Because a lot of times we like to externalize COVID-19 as to why I'm anxious, my mama as to why I'm anxious, this loud music in the neighborhood as to why I'm anxious. But what are you feeding your brain to also tell you that you're stressed? You play a role in your anxiety, believe it or not. Now, external will be all those things I listed. It may be people or things or situations that are causing triggers. You don't have control over those, but I'm letting you know you do have control over the internal trigger. Number 2, recognize your bodily cues. Another word for that is recognize what's going on with your body when you're anxious. So when you're anxious, you should know this about you. And I really hope that you know this about the people in your house, especially your children or adult college kids, okay? Is you should pay attention to your kids to know that when they're anxious, their left leg starts shaking. I picked that up in therapy with all my clients. Like, you nervous right now? No, I'm cool. Why you ask that? Because your left leg is shaking. And every time you get nervous when you're about to tell me something, you think I don't want to hear you start shaking your left leg. Like, I pay attention. I may not say it the first or second time, but after a while, I'm going to call it because clearly they don't want to say anything. So pay attention to your bodily cues. Do you feel hot? Do you feel nauseous? Do you feel fatigued or tired like you're about to pass out? Because that can tell you what you should do next. Step number 3 is implement coping skills. So coping skills are something that we teach in therapy, but these will only work only after you've identified why you mad or why you anxious or why you sad. So some coping strategies, the main 3 that I'll share with you right now briefly is counting, breathing, and visualization. So breathing would be, for example, taking 3 deep breaths in through your nose and slowly blowing them out, through your mouth like yoga. Not like, that sounds like you're hyperventilating or you're going through Lamaze about to give labor. That does not work. That actually makes you probably go into a panic attack, okay? Counting. Some people say counting doesn't work. Well, guess what? If you count from 1 to 10 or 10 to 1, unless you're 2, which some of those kids know how to count to 10 already, you've been counting to 10 for decades if you're an adult. So it doesn't create any mental effort. It doesn't make you think. It doesn't make you slow down. It doesn't make you mindful. Mindful is being in the present. So if you want to learn how to count right, and the reason I'm sharing 3 of them, at least right now, is because one of them may not work one day or in a situation and you got to try another one. One of these you may not be able to do while you're looking at your teacher on Zoom, okay? So counting would be choose a number over 65. Write this number down too. Choose a number over 65 that's not an even number. So let's just say your number was 67. What if I told you, let's just say you're anxious about all this work you have to do. What if I told you to start counting backward by 3s or 7s? you would probably look at me like I'm crazy after probably the second or third number set, right? I'm not expecting my clients to go down to zero. But what I am trying to show you is that if you just did it, like, I hope that you try to do it right now, once you got to maybe the third, fourth, or fifth set, what you probably would have recognized if you slow down is that you're no longer focused on what was making you anxious. You probably mad that you can't remember the next number, but your energy has shifted, or your mind has shifted to something safer, not just I'm anxious about everything going on around me. Okay. The last one is visualization. Visualize your happy place. Your happy place should be a place that you can go to in your mind. It doesn't have to be a place you went to in real life. If you want to go to an island, go to an island. But what you want to do in your visualization is you want to tap into your five senses. They do this in meditation with guided meditation. I would encourage you to look some up on YouTube. They are free. Guided meditation. If you know that you can't sit there with regular meditation, no music, and just sit there quietly. Not everybody's made the same way. But visualization is, if you say that you're in Hawaii on an island, I would ask you, what are the five senses? What do you see, taste, smell, hear, and touch? You have to go through those, because again, once you pay attention to your five senses and you start to visualize, like, oh my God, I'm relaxed on the beach, white sand, I can see my feet in the water, I hear the seagulls, I hear the water, it smells like salt water, whatever. You're no longer again going to be focused on the negative energy. Okay. So write that down, that your 3 coping skills that either you're going to retry if you tried them before and you didn't do them correctly is counting, breathing, and visualization. Now, the last couple of stages to wrap this up is, once you've now implemented the coping skill, the goal would be that you're now calmer. Then you are to state a positive affirmation, which I'll share a few before we hop off. Okay. But one of the positive affirmations that I like to share with my clients is that whatever pain you're experiencing right now is temporary. It's temporary. It's going to go away. You probably were feeling another way yesterday and sore up and down. It wasn't going to go anywhere. And you feel different today. Okay. After you state a positive affirmation, like today is going to be a great day, you should actually start your day with a positive affirmation. Then you are to look at your decision-making skills. So decision-making is broken up into 2 different parts, short-term and long-term. If you continue to spiral out of control with your negative thinking and your anxiety about what you maybe don't even have control over, which is this season, what are the short-term impacts on your life if you continue to remain anxious and you let it control your life? You're not going to be able to focus on your schoolwork. That's an immediate short-term consequence. A long-term consequence, you're not going to pass your class because you're going to allow your anxiety to consume you. Okay. Now you can do the flip. What is the positive short-term consequence if you teach yourself how to control your anxiety? You're going to be able to manage and get good grades. You're going to be able to pass a semester. This is something that you can teach to little kids. You just got to put it in their little language. Okay. And then the last step is reflect. Now that hopefully you made the right decision, now we're going to reflect on, how did that go for you? How do you feel? And the hope is that you recognize this wasn't so bad. Because believe it or not, even though it took me like 3 minutes to explain it, all of these happen in like less than 3 seconds. You're faced with a situation. This is what it looks like. Okay, I'm anxious because I keep looking at these 5 books on my desk. I know that I'm telling myself that I'm not going to get done with my homework. External cues is the books on the desk. I feel nervous. My heart is going really fast. Therefore, I need to do some deep breaths. I'm going to tell myself a positive affirmation, which is, I'm going to get through this homework. I'm going to be fine. And I'm going to be able to hang out with my family tonight. I made the decision not to allow my anxiety to overcome me because I want to have a good semester. That's it. That's how your brain actually works, but we just don't pay attention to it. Okay. So, does anyone have any questions? These are some, if you have questions, put them in the chat box, but I just want to wrap up. So one, I mentioned this during the break part, is be sure to keep the professor or teacher's contact handy off the computer, just in case your internet goes away. Because some of us keep a lot of things on our email or on Google Drive. Stream outages clearly can happen. And then these are some of the quotes that I liked. So I just, made these up. So the pain you are experiencing is temporary. You have been through something before and actually got through it. And you should remind yourself of that. Like, think back to an earlier time where you didn't think you were going to get through, and here you are today, living and well. And then the third one is be mindful of your circles of influence. This is to children, adolescents, adults, couples, and whomever else will watch this workshop. Be mindful of the people that you let into your energy circle. They mold who you are, how you think, and who you will become. So be careful. And not all company that you've had all these years is they shouldn't be in your company right now because they've been very toxic. So be very careful. So does anyone have any questions? This is how you contact me if you want to stay in touch. That's my Instagram. All right. Nice. So yeah, so what I'll do is I will get here. Let me see if I can copy and paste it and put it in the chat box, and or I can also send it to the creative team, but it's a PDF. We'll make sure to get that out somehow to everybody, or put it on the church's website, like the learning style quiz for people who want to take it later and not do it like via the PowerPoint. But yeah, that's the presentation. Like what I will wrap up with, because it's, you know, we've been on here for a while now, is the whole purpose of the church doing this is that this is a tough season. We're not going to negate the fact that this is a easy system. I mean, I'm sorry, a easy season for us. And one thing I want parents to hear, caregivers to hear, no matter how old your child is, ask them, how are they doing this season? Also for adults or for older adolescents who have the emotional maturity to do this with their parents, is ask people who are servants, whether they're servants in the community, in the church, in your household, or just the caregiver and they take care of everything, ask them how they're doing, because not everyone is okay. Prime example, I'm a mental health professional. I really haven't had any time off, if we want to be quite frank, because just like a regular essential provider in a medical facility, we actually in the medical field are working double the amount of time than we were before COVID. So I feel like people that are working from home, that are parenting from home, you probably feel the same way. You feel like you can't get a break, literally. Single parents, people who lack a support system, I feel you. You know, so also I'll say this in closing, don't minimize other people's feelings. So when I say minimize someone's feelings, if your child or an adult or a student says that the semester is hard, it's online, please, as a caregiver and adult, don't just say, I mean, you online all the time. I mean, because I've heard people say that, like, you on YouTube all the time, what's the difference? It is a difference. They can't socialize with their peers. Think about what it was like for you in the 90s or whenever, you know, you went to high school, if all of a sudden your school shut down. Our schools are our livelihood for college students and grad students as well, because especially like in upper division, you know, degrees, our connection is with one another. So make sure that you tune in with other people. Make sure you're not sheltering yourself literally in place in a corner in your house. Make sure you get outside your bedroom. Make sure you try to eat dinner with other people in your house. Make sure you try to talk about something other than school and the computer. When you're not Zooming, get off the computer, take a break, because we're over inundated right now with technology. So take a break. So that's all I got. I really hope that you enjoyed this workshop. If you have follow-up questions, you can always email me at info@drtk.com. And yeah, that's all I got. Anything else, creative director? No? All right, so I am wrapped up. All right. So everybody have a blessed evening, and I will see you somewhere online.